July 2001. A model Marine vanishes from a tightly guarded base. Her room? Untouched. Her routine? Unbroken. But 2 weeks later, they find her body deep inside a forgotten mine, and someone inside that base knows exactly how she got there. This is the story they tried to bury, and the mother who refused to let them. The disciplined rhythm of military life pulsed through the South Korean Marine Corps base situated on the southern fringes of Gwangju. In the early days of July 2001, the routines were predictable, the expectations clear. It was an environment where order reigned, and every individual played their part within the tightly structured framework of service. Within this demanding world, 24-year-old Kim So-yeon stood out. She wasn't just another Marine, she was widely regarded as a model figure, embodying the core tenets of military virtue. Discipline was second nature to her, responsibility a mantle she wore with pride, and punctual attendance an unwavering habit. Her commitment was exemplary, her dedication unquestioned by peers and superiors alike. That is why, on one particular morning, a ripple of disbelief, quickly followed by confusion and then alarm, spread through her unit. Kim So-yeon, the epitome of reliability, failed to appear for her morning routine. It was an absence as jarring as it was inexplicable. In the rigid structure of the Marine Corps, an unscheduled absence wasn't merely an oversight, it was a breach of protocol, a potential dereliction of duty. Initial reactions among some colleagues reportedly carried a sharp edge of anger, the assumption being that she had somehow abandoned her post without notice, an act unthinkable for someone of her standing. Captain Kim So-yeon, an officer who knew So-yeon and perhaps possessed a keener intuition regarding his personnel, initially harbored less severe thoughts. He considered the more mundane possibilities, perhaps she had simply overslept, an uncharacteristic but human error. Or maybe a minor personal problem had arisen suddenly, leaving her no time to report it through official channels. These were logical, rational explanations, momentary lapses that could, under normal circumstances, be addressed and rectified. The reality, however, proved far more unsettling. When the team leader responsible for the morning checks proceeded to So-yeon's dormitory room, the mundane explanations evaporated, replaced by a chilling void. The room itself offered no immediate answers, only deepening the enigma. So-yeon's bed was empty, the covers perhaps still holding the faint impression of where she might have slept, but she was gone. Yet, disturbingly, everything else seemed untouched, frozen in a state of perfect military order. Her personal belongings remained where they should be. Her military bag sat ready. Her uniform was neatly arranged on the bookshelf, awaiting the day's duties. It was as if she had simply dissolved into thin air, leaving behind only the meticulously ordered shell of her presence. Nothing appeared disturbed, nothing suggested a hasty departure or a struggle. She was simply not there. This strange and deeply concerning situation was immediately escalated. The discovery was reported without delay to the company commander, the gravity of an unaccounted-for Marine, especially one like So-yeon, demanding swift action. Less than an hour after the initial alarm was raised, the response was decisive. An emergency search order was issued, encompassing the entire base. Every corner, every building, every shadow within the perimeter was to be scrutinized. The disciplined routine of the base fractured, replaced by an atmosphere of urgent, anxious activity. As the search commenced, the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on everyone. It wasn't just So-yeon's immediate teammates who were baffled. Even Captain Kim So-yeon, despite his initial attempts at rationalization, found himself unable to offer any plausible explanation for what had transpired. How could a soldier so grounded, so reliable, vanish so completely, so incomprehensibly, from within the secure confines of a military installation? The question hung heavy in the humid July air. Amidst the growing unease, Choi Meng-gyu, a colleague described as being particularly close to So-yeon, found himself wrestling with a specific, haunting memory. His face reportedly pale with worry, he recounted his last conversation with her, which had taken place just the previous evening. So-yeon had expressed feelings of stress, a desire to clear her head and relax. "I said I wanted to take a walk because I wanted to relax," he recalled her saying, or words to that effect. She had apparently felt the need for some solitude, some time away from the pressures of their demanding roles. They had made plans, too, a meeting scheduled for that very morning to prepare for an upcoming tactical training exercise. It was a routine task, part of the collaborative rhythm of their work. But the morning had arrived, and So-yeon had not. Choi Ming-gyu's voice, as he shared this memory, trembled with a mixture of anxiety and profound regret. The weight of what if seemed to crush him. He blamed himself, questioning whether he should have sensed something was wrong, whether he could have done something, said something, to prevent his precious friend from stepping out alone the night before. Should he have insisted on accompanying her, despite her reassurances? The self-recrimination was palpable, a testament to the bond they shared and the sudden, terrifying vacuum left by her absence. His anxiety mirrored the question spreading like wildfire throughout the base personnel. Where did Kim So-yeon go? The immediate assumption was that she must have somehow left the installation. But if that were the case, why had no one seen her leave? Why had none of the sentries or duty personnel logged her departure? Standard military procedure dictated meticulous records of all entries and exits. If she had walked out the gate, there should have been a record, a witness, some formal trace of her movement. The apparent lack of any such record only compounded the mystery, transforming concern into a more ominous sense of dread. The image of the model Marine, the disciplined soldier, began to blur, replaced by the unsettling profile of a person who had vanished against all logic and procedure. The baffling disappearance of Kim So-yeon had begun, and the search for answers was only just starting within the guarded walls of the Gwangju base. The question of Kim So-yeon's whereabouts resonated through the Gwangju Marine Corps base with increasing urgency. With the initial shock giving way to organized procedure, the emergency base search swung into full operation that first afternoon. The command was unequivocal: check every nook and cranny, leave no stone unturned within the installation's perimeter. Teams fanned out, meticulously combing barracks, training facilities, administrative buildings, and storage areas. The disciplined environment, usually focused on drills and readiness, was now consumed by the tense, methodical hunt for one of their own. Yet, as hours passed under the weight of heavy uncertainty, the base seemed determined to hold onto its secrets. It was during this systematic sweep that the first tangible, albeit puzzling, piece of evidence surfaced. In a somewhat isolated section of the base, a closed exercise area located to the south and generally unfrequented by personnel, a search team encountered something out of place. There, partially concealed or perhaps simply overlooked until now, lay a standard-issue blue military bag. Its appearance was unremarkable, identical to those used by countless Marines, yet it bore a striking similarity to the one known to belong to Kim So-yeon. Hope, perhaps mixed with apprehension, might have surged through the team as they approached it. However, opening the bag offered little clarity, only more questions. Inside, they found nothing sinister, nothing overtly revealing, just a few simple snacks and a half-empty water bottle. The interpretation of this discovery was ambiguous. On one hand, it could suggest that So-yeon herself had been in this secluded area, perhaps taking a quiet break, consistent with her stated desire to relax the previous evening. The snacks and water might indicate she had planned a brief respite. On the other hand, the bag being left behind felt incomplete, almost like an interruption. Did it signify that she had stopped here for a short while before being called away or leaving unexpectedly? Or could it have been placed there by someone else entirely? The military bag, instead of providing a clear direction, simply added another layer of frustrating ambiguity to the intensifying investigation. The anxiety levels across the base, already high, notched up further. Adding to the disquiet were unsettling reports emerging from guards who had been on duty the previous night. Several sentries came forward with similar accounts, describing strange sounds they had heard emanating from the dense forest bordering the base perimeter around midnight. The descriptions varied slightly but converged on unsettling specifics: noises resembling heavy panting, labored breathing, or the distinct sound of someone running hurriedly through the undergrowth. In the dead of night, such sounds carried an inherently alarming quality. However, these testimonies were immediately complicated by the conditions under which they were heard. The darkness around midnight would have been profound, making visual confirmation impossible. Furthermore, the forested area was known to be quiet and rarely traversed by personnel late at night. This context led some to consider the possibility of misinterpretation or even auditory hallucinations, tricks played by the mind in the stillness and darkness. Could the sounds have been animals, or the wind, or simply the product of heightened alertness during a long watch? The information was deemed uncertain, lacking concrete verification. Despite this ambiguity, the base commander understood the potential significance. The reports couldn't be dismissed outright. They necessitated an even more thorough and expanded search, pushing the boundaries of the investigation. Another perplexing piece of information surfaced concerning activity at one of the base's less used access points, the auxiliary gate. Investigators received reports that this gate had been opened for a brief period during the morning hours after So-yeon's absence was noted. The security guard stationed there provided a cryptic account. He described seeing a woman approach the gate, notable because she was wearing civilian clothes, not a uniform. Her face was deliberately obscured, partially hidden by a hat pulled down low. According to the guard, the woman did not speak. Instead, she made a simple, non-verbal signal, which he interpreted as indicating she was leaving the base temporarily, perhaps just stepping out to get some food. Before he could question her further or get a clearer look, she quickly moved away and disappeared from view. This report immediately fueled speculation. Could this unidentified woman have been Kim So-yeon? The timing, shortly after her disappearance was likely discovered internally, was suggestive. But the details raised more questions than answers. Why would So-yeon, a Marine on active duty, be wearing civilian clothes on base? Why the obscured face and the silent signaling? Why leave through a secondary gate instead of the main entrance if her departure was legitimate? The guard's inability to definitively identify the woman, compounded by the darkness or distance, left this clue hanging tantalizingly unresolved. It was a thread that investigators knew they needed to pull, but for now, it merely added to the tangled web of the unknown. As the afternoon wore on, the intensive base search concluded without locating Kim So-yeon. The military bag remained the only physical trace potentially linked to her, and the guard testimonies, while unsettling, provided no definitive leads. Faced with a lack of progress within the base's confines, the commander made the inevitable decision: the investigation needed to look outwards. An order was given to expand the search area to include the terrain immediately surrounding the installation. Particular attention was directed towards the adjacent mountainous region. This rugged landscape, characterized by thick forests and steep, rocky paths, represented the most challenging, yet logically necessary, area to cover. It was during the planning and initial reconnaissance of this expanded zone that a name surfaced, casting a distinctly ominous shadow over the search: the Pyeongseok mine. This wasn't just any geographical feature, it was an abandoned mine, shuttered since the 1970s, a relic of a bygone industrial era left to decay in the wilderness. Local knowledge painted it as a place steeped in an eerie atmosphere, a location people generally avoided. Its entrances were likely unsecured, its shafts dark and potentially treacherous. The mere mention of the Pyeongseok mine immediately sparked grim possibilities within the investigation team. The fragmented clues gathered so far, the potential brief stop indicated by the bag, the sounds of struggle or flight from the forest, the possibility of a clandestine exit, now intersected with this forbidding landmark. Could So-yeon, seeking solitude on a walk, have ventured too close to the dangerous mine and accidentally slipped or fallen into its depths? Or did the sinister reputation of the place hint at something more deliberate, more malevolent? Could she have been forcibly taken there, dragged into the darkness by someone else? The anxiety that had been simmering throughout the day reached a boiling point. The search had moved beyond the base, entering a realm of unsettling folklore and tangible danger, yet the central, agonizing question remained unanswered, echoing with growing desperation: where on earth was Kim So-yeon? The lack of answers was becoming unbearable, pushing investigators toward the grim possibilities the wilderness might hold, while far away, the soldier's family remained unaware of the storm that was about to break over their lives. While the search teams at the Gwangju Marine Corps base grappled with fragmented clues and the unsettling shadow of the Pyeongseok mine, the ripples of Kim So-yeon's disappearance were about to crash with devastating force upon her family, miles away in their home city of Incheon. The military protocol, delayed perhaps by the initial hope of finding her quickly within the base, finally reached its painful necessity. On the morning of July 7th, nearly 2 full days after So-yeon had vanished from her morning routine, the official notification process began. In the small kitchen of the Kim family home, an ordinary domestic space about to be irrevocably altered, the ringing of the telephone sliced through the air. Kim Mi-ja, So-yeon's mother, answered, her hands reportedly trembling even before the caller identified themselves. The voice on the other end was formal, representing the Marine Corps base. The words delivered were likely chosen for their procedural correctness, yet they landed like hammer blows. "Are you there, Ms. Kim Mi-ja? Currently, your daughter, Ms. Kim So-yeon, is no longer present in the base. We are currently investigating and will contact you again." The phrase "no longer present" hung in the dead silence that followed, a sterile military euphemism utterly inadequate to convey the reality of the situation or soothe the rising tide of parental dread. For Kim Mi-ja, listening as if trapped in a waking nightmare, the carefully chosen words made no sense. Her daughter, the model soldier, the pride of the family, simply not present? What could that possibly mean? The official calm offered no comfort, only amplifying the terrifying uncertainty. Disbelief warred with burgeoning panic. "Missing?" she cried out, the question laced with suspicion and shock. "You mean my daughter has gone missing from the military base?" The initial shock quickly ignited into fierce maternal defense and outrage. Kim Mi-ja vehemently rejected the notion that her daughter would simply vanish without reason. "There's no way my child would just leave," she insisted, her voice likely cracking with anguish. She spoke of So-yeon's regular phone calls home, filled with enthusiasm for her work, her recent mention of returning home the following month. These were not the actions of someone planning to desert or disappear. Anger surged alongside the grief. What happened to that child? Were you protecting that child? She demanded of the unseen representative, the implicit trust between a family and the institution safeguarding their child shattering in real time. "You must take responsibility. You must take responsibility." Nearby, So-yeon's father, Kim Young-ho, reportedly slumped onto a wooden chair, his own strength failing him. A retired soldier himself, a man accustomed to maintaining composure even in difficult circumstances, he was now visibly distorted by fear. His disbelief mirrored his wife's. What drove that child out of the base? He questioned, grappling with the unthinkable. That child loved military life. It is absolutely not a foolish act. For both parents, So-yeon's disappearance flew in the face of everything they knew about their daughter's character, her dedication, and her passion for her chosen career. There was no question of waiting passively for more information. Fueled by a desperate need for answers and proximity, Kim Mi-ja and Kim Young-ho traveled immediately from Incheon to the base near Gwangju, arriving that same afternoon. They were ushered into an interview room, the atmosphere thick with tension, coldness, and the unspoken conflict between grieving parents and military officials perceived as failing in their duty. Captain Kan Daeun found himself facing the full force of their anguish and frustration. Kim Mi-ja, raw with grief and impatience, reportedly slammed her hand on the desk, tears streaming down her face as she confronted the captain. "The investigation. It's been 2 days and you still don't know where our child is?" Her voice was a mixture of accusation and despair. So-yeon is not a child who would just disappear on her own. She even texted me 2 days ago to say that everything was going well at the base. But what's going on now? Captain Kan Daeun attempted to maintain professional composure, expressing understanding for their anxiety and outlining the ongoing efforts, the mobilization of all resources, the expansion of the search into the surrounding mountainous terrain. But his apologies and assurances rang hollow in the face of their daughter's continued absence. For the parents, words were not enough. Their trust in the military's ability, or perhaps even willingness, to find their daughter was rapidly eroding. The breaking point came with Kim Mi-ja's heartbroken declaration, a transferal of blame born from utter desperation. "If something happens to her, it's not the heavens' fault. It's you, the people who protected her." With that fragile bond of trust irrevocably broken, the Kim family made a pivotal decision. They would no longer rely solely on the internal military investigation. They needed external intervention, a fresh perspective, and perhaps greater accountability. On July 8, the day after the tense meeting at the base, Kim Mi-ja and Kim Young-ho formally submitted a request for a private investigation to the Gwangju police station. This action immediately escalated the situation, bringing civilian law enforcement into what had initially been an internal military matter. The involvement of the Gwangju police significantly increased the pressure on the Marine Corps Base Command. It also triggered an explosion of media attention. The story of a missing female Marine, particularly one praised for her dedication, captured public interest. Kim So-yeon's family, refusing to remain silent, stood before television cameras and reporters, their faces etched with pain, demanding the truth. They publicly voiced their conviction that their daughter's disappearance was not natural, that something sinister had occurred, something potentially being concealed. There's no way such a skilled member of the Marine Corps would disappear naturally, they insisted. Military base. Inside and out, something happened that was hidden. We want to know the truth. Within days, Kim Mi-ja's anguished face, marked by sunken eyes and the visible toll of sleepless nights and constant worry, became a familiar image in major media outlets. Headlines screamed about the mysterious missing soldier and questioned the military's perceived silence, fueling public anger and speculation. Theories swirled: kidnapping, an internal affair gone wrong, something hidden within the base's culture. It was amidst this storm of controversy and grief that Kim Mi-ja unearthed a small, private notebook, her daughter's diary, found weeks earlier in So-yeon's room at home. Contained within its pages, written in what was described as hurried handwriting, was an entry that sent a fresh wave of chills through the family and would soon refocus the investigation. So-yeon had written, "There's something strange about this base. I feel like someone is watching me every night. I have to check the south gate. Someone or something is making me anxious. I can't tell anyone." The words were a bombshell. Kim Mi-ja reportedly almost collapsed upon reading them. Suddenly, So-yeon wasn't just a missing soldier, she was a young woman who had felt threatened, watched, and anxious within the very institution she served. The something strange, the specific mention of the South Gate, the inability to confide in anyone, it all painted a picture far removed from the positive updates she had shared in phone calls. This diary entry transformed the family's suspicion into near certainty that foul play was involved. It suggested So-yeon might have been investigating something herself, putting herself in danger. Armed with this deeply disturbing evidence, the family and the police pressed the military even harder for cooperation. The diary entry gave specific locations: the South Gate, the closed playground area mentioned in the transcript. Under mounting pressure from both the grieving family and intense public scrutiny, the military command eventually relented, granting the police permission to check the closed playground area near the South Gate and review the list of guards who had been on shift during the critical time frame. While a faint, desperate hope lingered that Kim So-yeon might still be found alive, her own words now cast a long, dark shadow, hinting at dangers lurking within the base itself. The family's anguish had galvanized them into action, piercing the initial wall of military procedure and bringing the full weight of public attention and civilian law enforcement to bear on the search for their daughter, a search now irrevocably tainted by suspicion and fear. The weight of Kim So-yeon's mother's question, "Where on earth were you that night?" pressed down not only on the family but on the entire investigation. Fueled by the family's grief-stricken demands, the disturbing contents of So-yeon's diary hinting at fear within the base, and the increasing pressure of public scrutiny, the combined military and police search efforts intensified and pivoted. With the base itself yielding no sign of the missing Marine after the initial days, attention turned decisively towards the rugged, mountainous terrain bordering the Gwangju installation. Specifically, investigators began to focus on the area surrounding the Pyeonsiak mine, the abandoned shaft whose eerie reputation now seemed chillingly relevant. By July 15, 2001, a full week after Kim So-yeon's family had escalated the investigation by involving the Gwangju police, the search had become a grueling ordeal. Teams composed of both military police and civilian officers pushed through dense, unforgiving forests, navigating treacherous, rocky paths under the relentless summer sun. They methodically cleared abandoned houses scattered in the rural landscape, places where someone might seek refuge or, more grimly, be hidden. Days of exhaustive searching across the wider region had yielded nothing, deepening the sense of frustration and dread. The lack of any trace inexorably drew the focus tighter, zeroing in on the dark reputation and physical isolation of the Pyeongseat mine, closed since the 1970s. It was a place locals avoided, a scar on the landscape whispered to hold echoes of the past. Now, it was the investigation's reluctant focal point. Search parties converged on the mine area. The atmosphere was thick with grim anticipation. Those coordinating the search above ground held their breath as the first team members, equipped with flashlights, cautiously began to probe the mine's entrance and accessible shafts. The descent into the darkness was a descent into the unknown, into the heart of the investigation's worst fears. Then, it happened. A beam from a flashlight cut through the subterranean gloom, illuminating a shape huddled deeper within. A collective intake of breath, a moment of stunned silence. It was unmistakably a human form. As the first team member, identified in some accounts as Park Ji-ho, moved closer, the horrific reality solidified. Curled up on the cold, hard ground in the middle of the mine lay the body of Kim So-yeon. Her eyes were closed, her form still, frozen in a state that spoke immediately of death. Any lingering, desperate hope that she might be found alive, perhaps injured or lost, was instantly extinguished. The initial shock gave way to the grim necessities of procedure, even amidst the horror. Instructions were relayed: check for vital signs, assess the situation, but it was a formality. Those first responders on the scene recognized immediately that So-yeon had been deceased for a significant amount of time. This was no accident, it was a crime scene. The evidence of extreme violence was immediate and sickeningly apparent. Dark marks of suffocation were clearly visible around her neck, the surrounding flesh discolored, bearing silent testimony to her final struggle for breath. Her body was a canvas of resistance. Large, distinct bruises marred the skin of both arms, suggesting she had been forcefully grabbed or restrained. Her knees were covered in scratches, perhaps incurred as she fought her attacker or was dragged across the rough mine floor. The scene around her told a story of chaos and desperation. Items known to be hers were scattered nearby: her cell phone, her jacket, the same half-empty water bottle potentially seen by witnesses or found in the abandoned bag earlier. The disarray painted a picture of a violent confrontation, suggesting a final, frantic attempt by So-yeon to defend herself against overwhelming force. As more investigators and military personnel carefully made their way into the mine, the full, horrifying tableau came into view. The ground itself held grim secrets. Hardened bloodstains marked the dry dirt and rocks, mute evidence of the violence inflicted. These stains weren't isolated, distinct bloody marks tracked across the floor, suggesting movement during the struggle, perhaps indicating where So-yeon had been dragged or where she had desperately tried to crawl away. Nearby, another object caught the investigators' lights: a broken wristwatch. Its glass surface was cracked, shattered by impact, and it too was stained with blood. Time had literally stopped here, violently. Amidst the brutality, one detail stood out with poignant clarity. Still fastened securely around So-yeon's wrist was a simple bracelet, engraved with a single, powerful word: hope. This bracelet was more than just an accessory, it was a cherished gift from her mother, Kim So-yeon, presented on the proud day So-yeon graduated from a rigorous military training. It symbolized her aspirations, her family's love, her future. Now, resting cold against her lifeless skin, it was a heartbreaking counterpoint to the despair of her final moments, a testament to the bright future that had been so savagely stolen. The emotional weight of this discovery was immense. One seasoned agent, overcome by the scene, was reported to have said tearfully, observing the signs of her struggle, "She fought until the very end." The somber task of recovering Kim So-yeon's body from the depths of the Pyeongseat mine began. As her remains were carefully moved back into the daylight, the sight inflicted a heavy toll, shaking even the most hardened military officers and police investigators present. The transition was complete and irreversible. This was no longer a missing person case. This was a brutal murder investigation. The wail of an approaching ambulance heralded the arrival of unimaginable grief. As So-yeon's body was being prepared for transport to the autopsy room, her parents, Kim Mi-ja and Kim Young-ho, arrived or were brought to the scene. The confrontation with the devastating truth was absolute. Kim Mi-ja collapsed at the edge of the road, her earlier frustration and anger consumed by raw, soul-shattering pain. Clutching the recovered, blood-stained Ho bracelet, the tangible link to her daughter's final moments, she cried out repeatedly, her voice choked with sobs, "How did you end up in this pain, So-yeon? What did you do wrong to deserve this?" Her anguish was a physical force, radiating outwards, touching everyone present. Kim Young-ho, the stoic former soldier, could maintain his composure no longer. His face, usually calm, was contorted with grief, his eyes bloodshot and trembling. Seeing his vibrant, enthusiastic daughter brought out cold and lifeless from the dark earth broke him. The grief, however, mingled with a burning rage. "We have to find that bastard," he gritted out, his voice thick with fury and the promise of retribution. "He will pay the price." The discovery in the Pyeongseok mine had provided a horrifying answer to the question of where Kim So-yeon was. It confirmed the worst fears harbored since her disappearance. But this grim resolution only served to amplify the remaining questions: who could have committed such a brutal act, and why? The focus now shifted from the search for a missing person to the hunt for a killer, with the answers hopefully lying hidden within the forensic details of the crime scene and the silent testimony of the victim's body. The horrifying discovery within the cold, damp confines of the Pyeongseok mine transformed the search for Kim So-yeon into a hunt for a killer. The brutal reality of her murder, underscored by the palpable grief and rage of her parents, Kim Mi-ja and Kim Young-ho, shifted the investigation into a new, urgent phase. While the mine had yielded the tragic answer to where So-yeon met her end, the crucial questions of who was responsible and why remained shrouded in darkness. Answers would need to be painstakingly extracted from the silent testimony of the victim's body and the scattered clues left at the desolate crime scene. The formal autopsy report provided the first stark, clinical details, painting a grim picture of So-yeon's final hours. Medical examiners determined that she had been deceased for at least 48 hours before her body was found on July 15th, placing her time of death sometime after she left the base on the evening of July 5th, but well before the search intensified. The primary cause of death was identified as suffocation, consistent with the violent marks observed around her neck at the scene. However, the violence inflicted upon her was not limited to this single act. The autopsy also revealed a significant wound to the back of her head, resulting from a forceful blow. This particular injury suggested a chilling possibility that So-yeon may have been attacked from behind, rendered defenseless or perhaps even unconscious before being dragged deeper into the mine where the final, fatal assault occurred. Further examination of the mine itself yielded another piece of haunting evidence. Near the rock wall close to where So-yeon's body was discovered, investigators documented thick scratch marks etched into the stone. While the earth and rock held no fingerprints, these scratches spoke volumes. The prevailing speculation among investigators was that these marks were left by So-yeon herself, her fingernails likely scraping against the unyielding surface in a desperate, futile struggle to escape her captor or claw her way towards a non-existent exit in the terrifying darkness. It was a detail that underscored the protracted horror and helplessness of her final moments. Beyond the immediate vicinity of the body, back towards the mine's entrance, another significant clue pointed towards premeditation and transport. Clearly imprinted in the soft dirt, away from the rugged footpaths, were distinct tire tracks from a vehicle. This discovery was crucial. It strongly indicated that someone had driven a car or truck to this remote, difficult-to-access location on the night of the murder. It suggested that So-yeon hadn't simply wandered to the mine during her walk, rather, she, or perhaps her body after an initial assault elsewhere, had been transported here. The presence of tire tracks inevitably sharpened the focus of the investigation. Who owned a vehicle that could navigate this terrain? Who would have driven here under the cover of darkness? And crucially, why bring her to this specific, abandoned mine? As investigators meticulously catalogued the physical evidence, attention also turned to the condition of Kim So-yeon's uniform, recovered with her body. What they found sent a fresh wave of unease through the team, suggesting something more personal and vindictive than a random act of violence. The Marine Corps logo, an emblem of pride and belonging typically affixed neatly to the left chest of the uniform, had been roughly torn away. The ragged threads left behind indicated intentional damage, not accidental tearing during a struggle. Lieutenant Han Jun-ho, tasked with leading the military's internal investigation into the matter, reportedly expressed distinct embarrassment and concern upon examining the defiled uniform in the forensic room. Defacement of the Corps logo is clearly an act of profound disrespect. In the military, he confided to a colleague, his voice heavy with worry. It seems that someone tried to trample on her honor, but who could it be? And why? This deliberate act of desecration pointed towards a perpetrator who harbored not just lethal intent, but also a deep-seated animosity towards So-yeon herself or the institution she represented. It felt personal. It felt like a statement. It was shortly after the examination of the uniform that another, seemingly small piece of evidence emerged from the items collected around the body, an item that would dramatically narrow the investigation's focus. Approximately 10 meters from where So-yeon lay, close to the area where the primary struggle was presumed to have occurred, searchers found a lighter. It was a common enough object, but this one bore an engraving, the name Jang Min-woo. The discovery immediately set off alarms. Who was Jang Min-woo? And why was his personal, named lighter lying near the body of a murdered colleague in an abandoned mine? The name prompted an urgent check of personnel records back at the base command center. The list of soldiers with the surname Jang was quickly reviewed. 3 individuals matched, but one name immediately stood out due to his rank in profile, Jang Min-woo, a senior training officer stationed at the Gwangju base. Officer Jang Min-woo was a known figure on the base. His reputation was that of a strict disciplinarian, demanding high standards from those under his command. However, this strictness did not always translate into respect. Some subordinates reportedly found him harsh or unfair. As investigators dug deeper into his service record, a critical piece of information surfaced, providing a sudden, powerful link between Jang Min-woo and the victim, Kim So-yeon. Internal disciplinary records revealed that Jang Min-woo had recently been the subject of official action. Just a week before So-yeon's disappearance, he had been formally disciplined for causing trouble related to the unfair treatment of subordinates. The connection became electrifying when investigators discovered the catalyst for that disciplinary action. One of the individuals who had formally raised concerns about Officer Jang's conduct, indeed, the one who had filed the official internal complaint detailing alleged harassment against another female soldier, was none other than Kim So-yeon. Her courageous decision to report a superior officer's misconduct, aimed at protecting a fellow Marine, had resulted in severe disciplinary consequences for Jang Min-woo. This revelation shifted the entire investigation. Suddenly, Jang Min-woo wasn't just a name on a lighter found near the crime scene. He was an officer with a documented, recent, and serious conflict with the victim, a conflict initiated by the victim herself. The disciplinary action, a significant blow to his career and reputation within the rigid hierarchy of the military, provided investigators with a potent, plausible motive: revenge. Could Jang Min-woo, humiliated and angered by the disciplinary action triggered by So-yeon's complaint, have sought retaliation? Testimony from So-yeon's colleagues began to corroborate this theory, painting a chilling picture of the aftermath of the complaint. One close colleague recounted a conversation where So-yeon had confided that Officer Jang had been pressuring her, questioning her motives for reporting him, demanding to know why she had argued with him or challenged his authority. Despite this pressure, So-yeon had remained resolute, reportedly telling her friend, "If we don't protect each other, who will protect us?" These words, spoken in defense of her principles just weeks before her death, now resonated with tragic irony, lingering like an eerie curse in the investigators' minds. The principled stand she took might have directly led to the hostility that ended her life. The pieces were rapidly falling into place. The lighter potentially placed Jang Min-woo at the scene. The recent disciplinary action, instigated by Kim So-yeon's formal complaint about harassment, provided a strong motive rooted in revenge and resentment. The torn logo on her uniform suggested a personal, targeted attack aimed at dishonoring her. Jang Min-woo, the strict senior training officer, was no longer just one name among many. He was now the prime suspect in the murder of Kim So-yeon. The investigation had its target, fueled by a compelling narrative of conflict, retaliation, and potential abuse of power. The next crucial step would be to confront the suspect himself, to see if his words would betray him as much as the growing mountain of circumstantial evidence already did. With Senior Training Officer Jong Min-woo now firmly established as the prime suspect, bearing a powerful motive rooted in retaliation for Kim So-yeon's damaging internal complaint, the investigation shifted towards direct confrontation. The circumstantial evidence, the engraved lighter found near the body, the torn insignia on So-yeon's uniform suggesting personal animosity, the documented history of conflict, painted a compelling picture. Yet, concrete proof directly linking him to the act of murder was still needed. Investigators summoned Officer Jong for formal questioning, bringing him into the stark environment of an investigation room where his rank offered no shield against scrutiny. His initial demeanor during this first interrogation was reportedly one of calculated composure, perhaps bordering on defiant coolness. He sat across from the investigators, his face described as expressionless, almost unreadable, though the tightly clenched hands resting on his knees betrayed an inner tension belying the outward calm. When asked the opening question, did he know Kim So-yeon? A slight, perhaps sarcastic, smile touched his lips. He acknowledged her, confirming she was one of the soldiers assigned to his team, but framed it as a simple fact of base life. Pressed further about any conflict between them, Jong Min-woo leaned back, narrowing his eyes, maintaining an air of relaxed confidence. He deflected, characterizing his interactions with So-yeon, like those with other subordinates, as merely enforcing necessary military standards. She was a soldier who had standards to meet, and he, as an officer, demanded adherence. He challenged the premise of the question itself, "Are you suspecting that I killed her because I am strict?" It was a performance of indignation, attempting to frame the investigator's suspicion as a logical persecution based on his reputation for discipline. Investigators then presented the first piece of tangible evidence connecting him, however tenuously, to the Pyeonseok mine. A photograph of the lighter, bearing his engraved name, found near So-yeon's body, was placed on the desk before him. A slight flicker, a momentary tremble in his eyes, was reportedly observed before he forced another mocking smile. "Yes, it is my lighter," he admitted, but immediately sought to neutralize its significance. "But do you know how many people in this base have lighters with my name on them?" He suggested it was a common item, easily lost or misplaced. "Are you going to accuse me of being a criminal just because it is there?" He challenged, implying it could have been planted or simply lost coincidentally. The questioning pivoted to his movements on the night Kim So-yeon disappeared. Investigators revealed that base CCTV cameras had captured his vehicle leaving the installation around 11 p.m., heading towards the mountainous area where the Pyeonseok mine was located, the same direction So-yeon was believed to have taken. Confronted with this, Jong Min-woo paused, then responded with a tone of slight irritation. He claimed he had simply gone out for some air, needing to relieve stress after a demanding week of training. Wasn't that his right as an officer? Investigators pressed further. Why drive towards a remote, mountainous area, near an abandoned mine, so late at night, purely for stress relief? And wasn't it a remarkable coincidence that his chosen route and timing mirrored So-yeon's last known movements? This time, Jong's cynical smile faded, replaced by an uncomfortable look. He insisted it was just a coincidence, stating a preference for quiet places and warning investigators not to exaggerate. Yet, a subtle tremor reportedly entered his voice. He demanded proof. "Do you have any evidence that I met her that day? If not, don't assign any orders." He clung to the absence of direct proof linking him to So-yeon that night. While Jong Min-woo projected defiance in the interrogation room, investigators were simultaneously uncovering information that cast serious doubt on his narrative. Anxiety rippled through the base as questions circulated about the relationship between the strict officer and the principled young Marine he had recently disciplined. Soldiers began to speak, albeit cautiously. One subordinate revealed the depth of the conflict following So-yeon's accusation regarding the harassment issue, recalling Jong Min-woo's intense anger. Worryingly, this soldier also remembered Jong muttering threats after the incident, remarks like "she seems to think she is great, but she'll find out soon," or that So-yeon deserved to pay the price in the end. These comments, perhaps dismissed as mere venting at the time, now carried the chilling weight of premeditation. The internal disciplinary records provided stark confirmation of the initial conflict. Kim So-yeon had indeed formally accused Jong Min-woo of harassment, leading to a reprimand that significantly damaged his reputation. The hostility was real, documented, and deeply personal. The investigation, however, seemed poised to hit an impasse. There was strong motive, suspicious circumstantial evidence like the lighter and the CCTV footage, and unsettling testimony about threats, but nothing irrefutably placed Jong Min-woo at the mine, interacting with So-yeon. Disappointment loomed for the investigators and, more acutely, for So-yeon's desperate family. Vague doubts and the suspect's continued denials threatened to stall progress. Then, on July 20, 2001, nearly 2 weeks after the investigation had been escalated by the family reporting to the police, an unexpected phone call arrived at the Gwangju police station. An anonymous male caller, his voice trembling with what sounded like a mixture of tension and anxiety, stated he had crucial information regarding the missing female soldier case. He believed he had seen her, and crucially, the man she was with, on the night she vanished. The police, recognizing the potential significance, responded carefully, urging the caller to provide specifics. Less than 2 hours later, the anonymous man, who lived in a small village near the Pyeonseok mine, was brought to the station. Appearing fatigued and worried, he explained his delay in coming forward. He hadn't realized the gravity of what he'd seen until news reports surfaced. Holding his old hat tightly, he stated he felt compelled to speak, believing the murdered girl's soul wouldn't rest otherwise. Detective Park, leading the investigation, calmly asked him to recount what he had witnessed. The man described cycling home late on the night of July 5, around 11 p.m. His route took him past the access path near the Pyeonseok mine. As he approached, he heard footsteps and voices raised in argument. Peering into the darkness, he saw 2 figures, a smaller person, likely female, possibly wearing a uniform like So-yeon's, and a significantly taller, larger man. He couldn't make out their faces clearly, nor the exact words exchanged, but the tone was confrontational. He distinctly heard the girl shout defiantly, something akin to "I'm not scared of you," or "You won't do anything to me." Initially intending to pass by, the witness hesitated as he saw the man physically grab the girl. They seemed to struggle briefly before the man apparently overpowered her, and then both figures disappeared from view, heading towards the abandoned mine. The witness admitted he had been terrified and had quickly continued on his way. When asked to describe the man, he reiterated he couldn't see the face but emphasized the man's large stature and height, mentioning he thought he wore a dark coat. Significantly, after seeing news reports about the case, the witness stated the man he saw bore a resemblance to descriptions or images of a military officer. This testimony was explosive. It provided the first independent account placing Kim So-yeon near the mine at the critical time, engaged in a hostile confrontation with a tall man matching an officer's general description. When cross-referenced, the witness's timeline aligned remarkably well with So-yeon leaving the base and Jong Min-woo's vehicle heading towards the mountains. The account strongly suggested the encounter was not accidental but confrontational, and that So-yeon had been forcibly taken towards the mine. News of the eyewitness testimony inevitably spread, electrifying public opinion and causing profound distress for So-yeon's family, who now pictured their daughter being physically dragged to her death. Within the military base, colleagues reevaluated Jong Min-woo's behavior with renewed suspicion. Armed with this powerful new account, investigators urgently summoned Jong Min-woo again. The atmosphere was markedly different. Gone was the suspect's earlier calculated calm. Faced with the detailed eyewitness statement, Jong reportedly became highly agitated, shouting denials, claiming it was of complete fabrication, insisting he wasn't there. Detective Park cut through the bluster sharply, confronting him directly. "Look straight at us and lie again. The witness said he saw you grab the victim. What's left now?" Jong Min-woo faltered. His eyes darted around the room as he desperately tried to discredit the account, claiming the witness was mistaken or part of a conspiracy to frame him. But the pressure was immense. The detailed, corroborated testimony, combined with the existing evidence and motive, formed a tightening net. For the first time, Jong Min-woo couldn't maintain his defiant posture. He reportedly lowered his head, his carefully constructed facade visibly crumbling under the weight of the accusation. The anonymous witness had provided a crucial link, placing suspect and victim together in a moment of conflict at the edge of the darkness, but the final, undeniable proof of what happened inside the mind was still needed. The eyewitness account had landed like a body blow, shattering Jong Min-woo's composure and placing him physically at the scene of a hostile confrontation with Kim So-yeon near the Pyeonseok mine on the night she died. His agitated denials and accusations of being framed rang hollow against the witness's detailed and corroborated testimony. Yet, despite the crumbling defenses and the tightening net of circumstantial evidence and motive, Officer Jong still hadn't admitted to the ultimate act, the murder itself. The crucial link, the irrefutable proof needed to secure a conviction, would have to come from the cold, hard facts unearthed by forensic science. While the interrogations unfolded, labs were meticulously analyzing the physical clues recovered from the grim scene within the mine and from the suspect himself. One of the first critical pieces of forensic evidence centered on the broken wristwatch found near So-yeon's body. Investigators had already noted its cracked glass and bloodstains. Forensic analysis delivered damning results. Laboratory tests confirmed the hardened bloodstains on the watch belonged to the victim, Kim So-yeon, matching her blood type B. Furthermore, analysis of the damage suggested the watch had sustained a violent impact, consistent with being struck, falling heavily, or being forcibly ripped from a wrist during a struggle, aligning perfectly with the signs of resistance found on So-yeon's body. Perhaps most crucially, investigators established that the watch belonged to Jong Min-woo. It was identified as the exact type he regularly wore. Armed with this potent physical link, investigators confronted Jong Min-woo again, placing the damaged, blood-stained timepiece before him. "Is this yours?" they asked, the question heavy with implication. Jong, glancing at the watch, could only offer an awkward, evasive response. "Well, I'm not sure," he reportedly stammered. "Watches like this are common everywhere. Someone might have taken mine and placed it at the scene." His attempt to dismiss the evidence was weak and unconvincing. Investigators immediately pushed back. "Don't evade responsibility, Mr. Jong," one countered. "It's exactly the type you always wore at that time. Plus, it has the victim Kim So-yeon's blood on it. How would you explain this?" Faced with the direct link, his watch, her blood, at the crime scene, Jong Min-woo was speechless, blinking, sweat forming on his brow as he fell back on the feeble claim of being framed. "Maybe that's why someone tried to trap me," he offered, his voice trembling. The forensic net tightened further with the analysis of evidence recovered during a search of Jong Min-woo's room or personal quarters at the base. Investigators hadn't stopped at the watch, they had sought anything that might shed light on his mindset or connection to the crime. Hidden within a drawer, they discovered a secret personal diary. Its contents provided a chilling window into Jong Min-woo's psyche and his venomous feelings towards Kim So-yeon. The pages were reportedly filled with sharp, hostile sentences, revealing a disturbing level of hatred and obsession directed at his junior colleague. As investigators read through the entries, certain lines stood out, sending shivers down their spines. He referred to So-yeon as an eyesore, someone who was always pretending to act righteously. The resentment festering since her internal complaint was palpable. More disturbingly, the entries seemed to cross into fantasies of silencing her. "If she won't keep quiet, I have to force her to keep quiet." His writings conveyed a growing sense of mental strain related to her presence. "The more I see her, the harder it is to stay sane." And then, the most ominous lines, hinting perhaps at premeditation or a longed-for resolution: "Someday, everything will end. No one will bother me anymore." The diary was presented to Jong Min-woo during interrogation. "We found this in your room," investigators stated, perhaps laying the open pages before him. "What's written here? Is this just an emotional outburst? Or was it the beginning of a plan to get revenge on her?" Seeing his private, hate-filled words exposed, Jong's face turned pale. He tried to dismiss the entries as mere anger, insignificant venting. "I just wrote it because I was angry," he claimed. Who wouldn't let their emotions out? Just because I wrote it doesn't mean I did something like that. But investigator Park reportedly countered with cold cynicism, just because something is written doesn't necessarily mean it will be acted on. Then why is everything in this diary so perfectly connected to the night Kim So-yeon was murdered? Do you still think we'll continue to listen to lies? The diary provided powerful evidence of motive, obsession, and potentially murderous intent. The final, conclusive piece of forensic evidence came from the object that had first drawn suspicion towards Jong Min-woo, the engraved lighter found near So-yeon's body. Initial dismissal by Jong proved futile against scientific analysis. Forensic testing delivered two critical findings. First, fingerprints lifted from the metal surface of the lighter were confirmed as a match to Jong Min-woo. Second, microscopic analysis detected trace amounts of blood adhered to the lighter. DNA testing confirmed this blood belonged to the victim, Kim So-yeon. This was the irrefutable link, the suspect's fingerprint and the victim's blood, together on the same object, recovered from the crime scene. There was no plausible explanation for this combination other than Jong Min-woo being present during the violent events that led to So-yeon's death. The culmination of the investigation arrived during a final, intense interrogation session. Investigators systematically laid out the full, damning weight of the evidence they had painstakingly compiled. They confronted Jong Min-woo with the entire picture, the anonymous eyewitness who saw him grab So-yeon near the mine, the tire tracks from his vehicle imprinted in the dirt near the entrance, the crucial GPS data retrieved from his cell phone, proving his presence at the exact location of the body discovery within the mine on the night of the murder, his broken watch, stained with So-yeon's blood, found at the scene, his personal diary, filled with hostile entries revealing motive and obsession, and finally, the lighter, bearing both his fingerprint and So-yeon's blood. Detective Park delivered the final challenge, his voice reportedly quiet but sharp as a blade. "Mr. Jong Min-woo, all the evidence points to you. How long are you going to deny reality? How much room do you think you have left to escape from this situation?" Under this relentless onslaught of evidence, Jong Min-woo's carefully constructed wall of denials finally crumbled completely. His hands trembled uncontrollably. Sweat flowed freely down his face. His eyes darted around the room, desperately seeking an escape that no longer existed. He lowered his head, shutting his eyes tightly, teeth clenched, his body language screaming defeat. The heavy silence in the interrogation room was broken only by his ragged breathing. And then, finally, the words came, not a full admission of calculated murder, but a partial confession, whispered in a very low voice, almost inaudible. "I didn't mean to do that," he reportedly muttered, his defenses shattered. "I just wanted to scare her. But she's too strong. She's out of control." It was the moment the investigators had been working towards for weeks. While his words attempted to mitigate his intent, framing the fatal encounter as an attempt to intimidate that escalated accidentally, it was an admission nonetheless. He admitted confronting her, admitted things got out of control, implicitly acknowledging his involvement in the events that led to her death. For the investigators, this confession, however self-serving, confirmed his guilt and marked the successful conclusion of their painstaking investigation. The confirmation that Jong Min-woo was responsible, supported by his own words and the irrefutable forensic evidence, brought a new wave of pain to Kim So-yeon's family. Kim Mi-ja, upon hearing the news, reportedly lost her remaining strength, sinking into her seat, clutching her daughter's photograph, tears streaming as she repeated the unanswerable question, "Why? Why did our So-yeon have to go through this? She was just trying to do the right thing." For Kim Young-ho, the confirmation likely fueled his quiet, burning anger, solidifying his resolve to see justice fully realized. The knowledge that their daughter was killed out of hatred by a fellow Marine she had dared to challenge was an almost unbearable burden. The Hope bracelet became an even more potent symbol of the bright life extinguished by base cruelty and revenge. Jong Min-woo's guilt was established, the path now led inexorably towards a military courtroom. With Jong Min-woo's confession, however self-serving, finally extracted under the crushing weight of forensic evidence and witness testimony, the investigative phase of Kim So-yeon's tragic case drew to a close. The painstaking work of gathering clues, analyzing evidence, and interrogating the suspect had yielded its painful truth. The path forward now led from the confines of the investigation room to the formal setting of a military tribunal, where the legal process of accountability would unfold. In October 2001, just a few months after the grim discovery in the Pyeonseok mine had confirmed the nation's worst fears, the trial of senior training officer Jang Min-woo officially commenced at the Gwangju Military Court. This venue underscored the particular nature of the crime, a murder allegedly committed by one member of the armed forces against another, within the context of their service. The courtroom itself became a stage, not just for legal arguments, but for the raw intersection of grief, anger, institutional responsibility, and the public's demand for justice that had galvanized around So-yeon's case. The atmosphere inside the Gwangju Military Court on the opening day was described as heavy, almost suffocating. A palpable tension mingled with profound sadness. All eyes were fixed on the proceedings, awaiting the final chapter in a story that had shocked the nation. Present in the courtroom was the defendant, Jang Min-woo. No longer just an officer, he stood accused, clad in his military uniform, a garment that now seemed less a symbol of honor and discipline, and more a stark reminder of the alleged betrayal of trust and the horrific violence committed. Seated prominently in the front row were Kim So-yeon's parents, Kim Mi-ja and Kim Young-ho. Their faces were haggard, etched with the unimaginable pain of the preceding months. Kim Mi-ja reportedly held tightly onto the Ho bracelet recovered from her daughter's wrist, a tangible link to So-yeon's life and dreams, now clutched like a talisman against the unbearable proceedings. Beside her sat Kim Young-ho, his usual composure replaced by eyes filled with suppressed agony and righteous anger. Further back, several of So-yeon's former colleagues from the Marine Corps base sat with bowed heads, their somber presence adding another layer of gravity to the already charged environment. The hopes of a bright young woman, extinguished too soon, weighed heavily on everyone connected to her. As the formal proceedings began, the judge's voice cut through the silence, calling the defendant to stand. Jang Min-woo rose slowly. As he glanced around the courtroom, his gaze reportedly met that of Kim Mi-ja. Faced with her direct stare, filled with the depth of a mother's loss and unwavering accusation, his own eyes were said to have flickered, pupils shaking before he quickly turned away. The charge was read, premeditated murder of Marine Kim So-yeon. When asked for his plea, Jang Min-woo swallowed, his voice hoarse as he addressed the court. He did not deny his involvement in her death entirely, but clung desperately to the narrative he had offered in his confession. It wasn't the deceased, he claimed, meaning it wasn't intentional murder. His hands gripped the railing before him, shaking constantly as he repeated his assertion, it was just an accident. I didn't mean to kill her. He attempted to frame the horrific events as a confrontation gone tragically wrong, an attempt to scare that spiraled fatally out of control, rather than a calculated act of revenge. The prosecution then began methodically laying out its case, constructing an irrefutable narrative of intentional murder built upon the foundation of the investigation's findings. Detective Park, the lead investigator who had pieced together the puzzle, took the stand. He recounted the investigation process step by step, presenting the court with the chain of evidence. He detailed the discovery of So-yeon's body, the grim findings of the autopsy report, the tire tracks indicating transport to the mine, the unsettlingly torn Marine Corps logo on her uniform. He then presented the crucial forensic evidence, the lighter found near the body, bearing Jang Min-woo's fingerprint and So-yeon's blood, the broken watch belonging to Jang, also stained with So-yeon's blood, recovered from the scene, the GPS data placing Jang's phone at the mine during the critical time window. The investigator's testimony, delivered with cold precision, painted a damning picture, his gaze reportedly fixed on the defendant. The courtroom remained locked in tense silence as the physical evidence mounted. However, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when the prosecution introduced Jang Min-woo's personal diary. As the prosecutor read aloud excerpts filled with hostility, obsession, and chilling phrases like eyesore, force her to keep quiet, and someday, everything will end, the raw emotion in the room became unbearable for So-yeon's mother. Kim Mi-ja could no longer contain her anguish. Hearing the venomous words Jang had secretly penned about her daughter, words that seemed to foreshadow the violence to come, she broke down completely, her heart-wrenching sobs echoing in the stark courtroom. She is going. She will pay the price, the prosecutor read, and the cruel words hung in the air, a stark testament to the defendant's alleged state of mind. Kim So-yeon's raw grief soon erupted into direct confrontation. Unable to tolerate Jang Min-woo's continued presence and his claims of accident, she reportedly stood abruptly, pointing an accusing finger at the defendant. "Stop!" she cried out, her voice filled with pain and fury. "Why did my daughter have to pay such a price? So-yeon was just trying to live right and protect others. You didn't just kill her. You destroyed my entire life, my faith." Her anguished words resonated throughout the courtroom, a visceral expression of the devastation wrought by the crime. Others bowed their heads in shared sorrow. Following his wife's outburst, the usually reserved Kim So-yeon finally broke his silence. His voice, rough and thick with anger, addressed the court. "Punish him like he did to our daughter," he demanded, his words a raw plea for retribution. "Don't let him avoid responsibility. People like that don't deserve to live in peace." The family's demands were clear, nothing less than the full measure of justice for the irreparable harm inflicted upon them. After several days of testimony and the presentation of the overwhelming evidence, the military judges presiding over the tribunal retreated to deliberate. The courtroom waited, suspended in anticipation. When the judges returned, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. The final verdict was delivered, confirming what the evidence had strongly indicated. Defendant Jang Min-woo was found guilty of the intentional murder of Kim So-yeon, driven by personal resentment and a desire for revenge following her internal complaint against him. Immediately following the guilty verdict, the sentence was pronounced. For the calculated, brutal murder of his junior colleague, Jang Min-woo was sentenced to life imprisonment. A stir went through the courtroom as the sentence was read. Kim So-yeon sank back into her chair, tears flowing, perhaps this time mingled with a sliver of grim satisfaction. "Finally, justice for So-yeon," she reportedly whispered, acknowledging the legal accountability achieved, while simultaneously grappling with the immutable reality, "My daughter. Because it will never come back." It was the somber acceptance of a justice that could punish the guilty but never restore the innocent life lost. As Jang Min-woo was led from the military court to begin his life sentence, he reportedly glanced back one last time. On his face, some observed an expression of regret. But it was a fleeting look, perceived by those who had witnessed the depth of the family's suffering as a meaningless, empty gesture, the too late realization of a man facing the stark consequences of his unforgivable actions. The trial had reached its legal conclusion, delivering accountability, but the pain it addressed, and the questions it raised about the environment that allowed such a tragedy to occur, would linger long after the courtroom doors closed.